So I'm down in New Zealand, I'm taking a little bit of a break, some time out, but I have been testing two new phones here from Xiaomi. It is the POCO X7 series. These are affordable phones here. They have some similarities, like their main camera on the rear, 50 megapixels with optical image stabilization. It's a Sony sensor. That's the same ultra wide, the same selfie camera. And there is then the differences of chipset. So the X7 has the Dimensity 7300 Ultra, and the X7 Pro has the Dimensity 9400 Ultra. And there's a big difference, as you'll see in their performance later in this video. I'll go over the software, some benchmarks, camera samples of course, and what you can expect out of these two POCO X7 phones here from Xiaomi. The good news is with both of these POCO phones, you do get a case. You'll find the SIM tray tool right here. There's a little bit of paperwork, so we have a warranty card and there's safety information. And just under this, you'll see we have a TPU case, which you get with both of the models. Both models also do include a charging cable, which you're going to get with any phone. In fact, every phone should still have that, but you get the charger too included. Other brands are removing this, and good to see that Xiaomi has not with these POCO phones. So we have a 45-watt charger with the more cheaper, more affordable X7 model, and 90 watts here with the X7 Pro. So if you want the faster charging times, which I'll let you know about later in this review, then you definitely want to go for the Pro version. So the build of both of them is quite different. You can see they look like they're not even both X7 phones with how different they are. Now the X7 Pro, which is right here, it's got the vegan leather on the back. It's slightly lighter. So this one weighs 198 grams versus 185 with the POCO. The POCO has the glass on the back of it. Well, actually, I think that's plastic on the back there. You can see the POCO branding there and a smaller POCO branding with the Pro model. Now cameras, they are using the same 50 megapixel cameras, the main one with optical image stabilization and an 8 megapixel camera too, is our ultra wide. Now that main camera having the optical image stabilization, very good at this price point, especially for the more low-end X7, the non-Pro model, and a very bright aperture of f1.5 on both is not normal for this category of phone. So we've got 6,000 milliamp hour battery versus 5,110 milliamp hour, and then the charging difference I pointed out with the boxes. We get the curved edges here with the X7. Both have a very good build quality to them. The frames on both, they are plastic, okay? But you've got a matte finish here and an imitation, what also feels like with the paint job, like it could be metal, but no, they are plastic on both of them. So you've got the flat screen versus the curved screen, 120 AMOLEDs, and they both are that 6.67 inches. Now the fingerprint reader location, I don't particularly like this. I think it's too low. It should be a little bit higher, but it works well on both of them. Optical fingerprint readers, of course. You'll be looking at a flagship phone that would have, or at least a mid-range, to have ultrasonic there. Now the front-facing camera, we've seen this used a lot. Both of them, the hole cutout style and 20 megapixels there. For the ports down the bottom, both of them, they are not video out supporting, even though the more premium Pro model maybe it could have that, but it doesn't. So there's no video out of these here. We've got our loudspeakers on the bottom, SIM tray tools, no micro SD card support, no 3.5mm headphone jack, unfortunately. And at the top, looking at them, we've got the secondary loudspeakers, the earpiece, and IR transmitter, which is good with both of those. So there are some differences. Just to remember that the curved screen is the X7 and the flat screen is the X7 Pro with the larger battery, faster charging, and more things that I'll get onto. So it would seem that the POCO X7 Pro model would be the thickest, right? Looking at them side on. But because of the curvature to it here, it creates that illusion that it is slimmer. It in fact is the thicker of the two phones here. So the Pro version is 8.29 millimeters, and then the non-Pro that is 8.63. So it's in fact slightly thicker here, even though this one has the larger battery. So what about the screen? So they're both 6.67 inches, both 120 hertz, AMOLED screens, and the fluidity of both of them, if I remove the chipset from the equation here, is really the same. However, because of the chipset, you'll see that we do get a few more slowdowns and animations with the Dimensity 7300 Ultra powered X7 versus our X7 Pro. Now on paper, they're supposed to be over 3000 nits when you're looking at HDR content, but with the X7 Pro, which is on the right of the screen, I measure close to 480 nits, and then with this model here, the X7, the cheaper model, this is just over 420 nits. And in direct sunlight, you can see there is a little bit of a difference between them. Both are legible, and they do have that 1.5K resolution on both of them. So they look sharp, the screens. Now through the settings menu, you can adjust a few things like the colors. I won't bother showing you that because it's all pretty much straightforward. And the big difference is the curvature to them as well, because we've got the curved AMOLED, the edges with our X7, the non-Pro version, and the Pro version, this is a completely flat screen, which personally I do prefer. Let me know in the comments, do you like curved or do you prefer flat? And they are both decent screens. It really depends on what you're after here and how much, of course, you do want to spend. Oh, and they're both using 1920 Hertz for their pulse width modulation. So why I haven't mentioned anything about flicker is because I'm not seeing flicker. No flicker. So if you're someone that is sensitive to pulse width modulation at lower frequencies, well, it's very high here. So you're not going to see any flicker from both of them. It's been really good for me. Both of the phones running HyperOS 2, which is for POCO, do come with a lot of bloatware out of the box, and I think it's a bit excessive how much they do have on board here with these POCO phones. So you can see that we have LinkedIn, Spotify, there's Amazon Shopping, there's a lot of games that are already there pre-installed, and you do have to spend quite a bit of time, in fact, to remove all these excessive bloatware applications. The other thing that I think definitely should not be here, after all, you've paid for this phone, you've outright bought it, you're not leasing it from them. Why are there advertisements within some of the system apps? That's just, I think, unacceptable and not good to see. The phones have a Widevine Level 1 cert with them, so Netflix, Amazon Prime Video is going to run on both of them. Camera 2 API support there, which is Level 3, so if you want to use Gcam ports and open camera, you can do so. And a huge difference when it comes to our performance. The Antutu scores, big difference here. So with the Dimensity 8300, we're looking at just over 1.5 million points here with Antutu. So huge score compared to what we get with our POCO X7, which is just below 700,000. And do you notice this? In gaming, definitely, and you even notice it in the UI. This feels like a much quicker, snappier phone, and you get less system lags. But as I showed you before, that you will sometimes see it here with the POCO X7 Pro. Now for charging times, there is an obvious difference because we are looking at 90 watts with the Pro version versus only 45. So it does take 49 minutes for the X7 to fully charge. It's 5,110 milliamp hour battery, and the huge 6,000 milliamp hour battery of the Pro version here, that is going to take just over 30 minutes. As for throttling, well, I couldn't test it with our Dimensity 9400 Ultra. It just would not let me install the Wildlife Extreme stress test with 3D Mark. It kept saying that it couldn't connect to the servers. Whereas with our lower end version here, the X7, well, that 7300 Ultra, it didn't really throttle at all. It gets barely warm. Now, I have noticed that when I'm gaming, especially with the POCO X7 Pro, it gets a little warm, and they do have the plastic frames to them, as I pointed out. So there is definitely some throttling that happens with the X7 Pro, but there is a big difference in the performance of both of them. Then battery life, as expected, the more powerful chip, which will probably lend to being a bit more efficient too as well in tasks, and of course the much larger battery capacity of 6,000 milliamp hours with our Pro model, gave me 11 hours and 46 minutes with this fixed battery life test here. The POCO X7 got 8 hours and 38 minutes, which is still good, but it has a smaller battery, which is 5,110 milliamp hours. So this is an expected result. Now, realistically, real world, you're looking at around about 6.5 hours of screen on time versus around 8.5 with the X7 Pro. So both models do have 1.5K AMOLED screens, their resolution. They're IP68, both of them, and both have the dual loudspeakers. I believe they're using the same hardware because I can really not distinguish the difference between both of them. They are almost I would say identical when it comes to the loudspeakers. So I'll test the same song like I always do, and it's set to 100% volume, and I'll let you have a listen to which one of these you think sounds the best. But to my ears, being here in person with them, I really do think they are the same. And over now to our cameras and video performance. Up first with the POCO X7 Pro. So this is our front-facing camera. We only get 1080p 30 or 60 frames per second, no 4K. Now there's a little bit of wind here at the moment, bit of a breeze that might be coming through with the microphones. The ultra-wide cannot shoot 4K. It's the same with the non-pro version. It's only 1080p you can shoot with our ultra-wide camera. It uses some very heavy electronic image stabilization. It's very steady, but the quality is definitely lacking in resolution and details, and I would love to have 4K ultra-wide footage with video, but unfortunately we don't have that. This is now 4K footage, so it's got optical image stabilization and electronic. It's Rangitoto Island there in the background, and this is a dormant volcano, so it's just sleeping. One day it's going to wake up and explode again. I'll apply some digital zoom here. That is 2 times. So it is steady, the footage. Even if I just walk along a bit, you can see very steady here. Applying a lot of electronic image stabilization. And I cannot go over to the ultra wide at all, so you need to make that decision whether you use the ultra wide at 1080p or you go 4K with our main camera. Looking at our photos now, I'm starting out with the X7, and this is the portrait camera. It's exactly the same hardware we have on both of the phones. They take similar photos. Now, there's a little bit of skin smoothing, even though beautifying is completely off. Stitching is all right. It's okay. We're not looking at a flagship phone here, and I'm pleased with the quality considering the price tag of these phones here. Over to the zoom range. So first the ultra wide, that's 15mm. This is now the main camera, so optically image stabilized. That's 26mm. I'll then take it up to 2 times digital zoom and gone in further now to a 106mm equivalent. Going over that, it starts to look a little bit too pixelated, but it's all right. Again with the main camera, but no digital zoom, looks pretty good. Low light samples as well on both of them are really about the same, not too much of a difference. It does all right again because it has the optical image stabilization, which really does help out for low light shots, just to help to remove any blur, and overall pretty good, I think, for the price of these phones. So for gaming, normally I would show you my European account that I have of Genshin Impact, but because I'm connecting to European servers all the way from New Zealand, it's very laggy and slow, so I had to get a 30 gigabyte download here of this game, Genshin Impact. And I've been testing it out on both of the phones. And I'm using the Pro model here because it has that faster 8400 Dimensity. The performance is good, so it will run, I can already see that. It's going to run Genshin Impact just fine. It's going to give you good performance. And you've got Game Turbo from Xiaomi, so you swipe from the top left-hand corner, it brings up this menu here, and you can prioritize the frame rate just to help boost the performance. Clear the RAM, all of those typical kind of settings you do get. So if you intend to game a lot, you definitely want to go for the X7 Pro because it has the better chipset for gaming. So of course, no surprise that it's the X7 Pro that is the faster, better model of these two. I mean, we knew this before even going into my tests and the review, that it would come out on top just looking at the spec sheet. It has, after all, the faster processor. But camera-wise, both of them, even though I've mostly shown you samples from the Pro model here, are really identical. There's no real difference between them. They're using the exact same hardware and very similar optimization. The only real differences would be down to probably the ISP with the slightly faster Dimensity 8400 Ultra versus the 8300 Ultra. Gaming wise, yes, this is a lot better. I do see quite a few stutters and lags, even in the UI with the more weaker 7300 Ultra Dimensity chipset. So that's a key area that I would say, if you can afford to go for the X7 Pro because long term it's just going to be better, and straight out of the box I experience less lags and frame dips when in the UI. It did happen occasionally, and I think some of it is down to ROM optimization from Xiaomi. Speaking of which, when you get these phones out of the box, I don't like the amount of pre-installed bloatware I'm seeing. By bloatware, I mean that application or that game that you probably never use that it came with already installed. I think brands should let us decide what to install on our phones. After all, we've got Play Store and you have their own store too as well. The other is the inbuilt advertisements. I have to mention this because it's not on. I think that should not exist at all. After all, you're paying the full price, right, for these phones. It's not like you got them for free and you're paying monthly, you're leasing them. And I know that they've mentioned in the past that apparently why they have the adverts, it's to help lower the cost of these phones. I see that as just an excuse. Really, they should not be doing it. So they're okay phones. You do, as they say, get what you pay for. So go for the slightly better Pro model, but also check out Xiaomi's Redmi Note 14 series. That is a better phone, and I think is another option to look at if you're a similar kind of grouping. It's slightly more expensive, but overall you're going to get a slightly better phone. You could also look at previous flagships that are maybe 2 years old. But anyway, that is the POCO X7 series there. Thank you so much for watching this review and, well, comparison of both of these models.